Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, unable to move a single muscle in your body? Felt like you were trapped in a nightmare, yet fully aware? Let me tell you a story that changed my life. It was the one and only time I experienced something called sleep paralysis. But this went far beyond any medical explanation. This experience was different, terrifying, yet incredibly real. To this day, I wonder if it was just my mind playing tricks on me or if I truly saw something I wasn't meant to see. It all happened on an ordinary night, but what I lived through that night is etched in my memory as if it were a warning. 3 figures with glowing, crystal-like heads entered my room, and worse, they invaded my mind. Since that moment, I've never slept the same. Do you want to know what happened? Before I go on, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you've ever had a scary experience like this, share it in the comments. Your story could be the next one featured here. It was a typical summer night. The room felt cool, crickets were chirping outside, and the streetlight faintly illuminated shadows on my walls. I felt comforted by the calm atmosphere, a perfect contrast to the chaos of my day. My bed was neatly made, and the smell of freshly laundered sheets helped me relax. But something wasn't right. I tried convincing myself it was just exhaustion. I turned over a few times, searching for the perfect position, but with each passing minute, something felt off. It was as if the air around me grew heavier, almost suffocating. A sense of not being alone started to creep in. And then it happened. When I tried to move, my body wouldn't respond. My arms, my legs, my head, everything was frozen. It was like something invisible had taken control. My heart raced, and though I wanted to scream, my mouth felt sealed shut. I was a prisoner in my own body. And that's when the real terror began. It wasn't just the paralysis that scared me. It was the presence. Something or someone was in the room with me. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. It was like a weight, a sinister energy that seemed to watch my every thought. I looked toward the corner of the room where I usually kept my backpack. It was still there, but the shadows seemed longer than they should have been. Every faint light from outside cast shapes I couldn't decipher. My hands were sweating, even though I couldn't move them. It felt as if the entire room was pressing down on me, like the air itself was part of what was trapping me. The sound of crickets, which had been comforting moments ago, now felt distant. It was as if I were somewhere between reality and something else, something that shouldn't have been there. My eyes, the only part of me I could still control, searched desperately for something familiar to pull me out of this. But there was nothing. Then I started to hear it. It wasn't loud, but it was constant, a kind of humming sound, as if it were coming from inside my own head. It had a rhythm, like a distant, almost hypnotic beat. I tried to figure out what it was, but every time I focused on the sound, the presence I felt grew stronger. It was as if it knew I was trying to resist. My attempts to rationalize the situation slowly faded away. I couldn't move my body, but my mind was on high alert. I started recalling stories I had heard, accounts from others about figures that appear at night, shadows that watch us when we're most vulnerable. But until that moment, I had never believed them. The feeling of being watched became unbearable. My eyes darted to the slightly open door. Why hadn't I closed it before going to sleep? Why did I always think leaving it open gave me a sense of security? Now that small gap between the door and the frame felt like an entryway to something far worse than I could ever imagine. It was as if the darkness in the hallway was moving, almost breathing. I couldn't see anything clearly, but my instincts screamed that something was there, something waiting for the right moment to come in. My heart raced so fast I thought I might pass out, but at the same time, the fear kept me tethered to this reality. I don't know how long I stayed like that. It could have been seconds or minutes, but to me it felt like an eternity. Every sound, every shadow, every flicker of light became a monumental event, something my mind couldn't process, and all I could do was watch, helpless, as my body remained paralyzed. Suddenly they appeared. At first it was just a shadow sliding through the cracked door. I tried convincing myself it was only my imagination, but something felt wrong. There was a strange movement, subtle, almost imperceptible, but my eyes caught it. Slowly, the shadows took shape, and that's when I saw them for the first time. 3 small, slender, almost human-like figures walked into the room in single file. Their heads glowed in a surreal way, like crystal orbs containing a vortex of swirling lights. It was mesmerizing and terrifying all at once. Each step they took seemed to echo in the absolute silence, even though there was no sound. It was as if their presence was louder than any noise could be. They moved closer, slowly, but each second felt like an eternity. When the first one stopped beside my bed, my mind was flooded with an indescribable sensation. It felt as though I was being observed from the inside out. It wasn't just fear, it was something deeper, something that made every thought I had feel exposed, vulnerable. I stared at the creature. Its head pulsed with light, almost as if it were alive. The lights inside it formed patterns I had never seen before, patterns my mind couldn't fully grasp. It was like I was staring into infinity, into something no human eyes were ever meant to see. The other 2 creatures stopped at the foot of the bed. Their postures were strange, almost synchronized, as if they were waiting for something. They had no eyes, yet I could feel their gaze locked on me. My body remained motionless, but inside my mind was screaming, begging to wake up, to escape this nightmare. In a moment of pure desperation, I tried to focus my attention elsewhere. My eyes shifted to the bedroom door, still slightly ajar. A dense darkness seemed to seep through, almost swallowing the faint sliver of light from the hallway. The room, once familiar, now felt like an entirely different place, a setting straight out of a nightmare. They stayed there, unmoving, watching. Whatever they were doing, it felt deliberate. One of the creatures tilted its glowing head, leaning closer to my face. I could feel something emanating from it, an energy that deepened my paralysis. It was as if, somehow, it was siphoning my consciousness, diving into thoughts I didn't even know existed. Time seemed frozen. Every second was torment. The feeling of helplessness, combined with the horror of being invaded so profoundly, was unbearable. The creatures didn't seem rushed. They were in complete control, as if they knew there was no escape for me. I knew I had to fight back. My mind was desperate, screaming for my body to move. I tried wiggling my fingers, but nothing happened. I focused on my legs, but they felt like they were made of stone. My body no longer felt like my own. As the creatures lingered around the bed, my breathing grew heavier. It felt like something was draining my energy, pulling me toward a place I didn't want to go. The air around me was dense, almost electric. I could feel a strange heat closing in on me, radiating from the glowing heads that pulsed in an eerily coordinated rhythm. My eyes, still the only part of me I could control, tracked their every movement. One of the creatures leaned even closer, its glowing head casting shadows that danced across the walls. That was the moment something inside me snapped. It was pure instinct. I gathered every ounce of mental strength clinging to the last spark of control I felt in my body. And then I did it. My right foot moved, a small motion, but it was enough to ignite a flicker of hope. With a desperate burst of energy, I kicked as hard as I could. The sound echoed through the room. My foot had struck something solid. The wardrobe. In that instant, everything changed. The creatures, once so present, simply vanished. They didn't run or retreat. They just disappeared, as if they had never been there. The room returned to silence, but it was a tense, almost palpable silence. The detail that sent shivers down my spine was the door to my room. I was certain it had been open when they came in. Now, it was completely shut. Slowly, I got out of bed, my body still trembling. I walked to the door and opened it. The hallway was empty. No signs of life, no sounds, just the emptiness of the night. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Whatever these creatures were, they had left a mark on me, something I couldn't explain. I glanced back at my room, one last time before closing the door again, and in that moment, I understood that something much bigger was at play. I spent the rest of the night sitting on my bed, unable to close my eyes. My mind was racing, trying to find a rational explanation for what had happened. I began researching sleep paralysis online, but nothing I read seemed to fully fit. Hallucinations? Maybe. But why did everything feel so real? I discovered that many people report similar experiences. Shadowy figures, threatening presences. Some believe these are just creations of the mind. Others, however, are convinced these moments are glimpses into another reality. But what if that's true? What if, in these moments of vulnerability, we're exposed to something that has always been there, hidden in plain sight? Every time I tried to forget, flashes of that night came rushing back to me. The glow of their heads, their slow but calculated movements, and those eyeless gazes that seemed to pierce my soul. I kept asking myself, why me? Was it a warning? A mistake? Or simply a terrifying coincidence? Since that night, my habits have completely changed. I've never been able to sleep with my bedroom door open again. Every sound in the middle of the night, every shadow cast by streetlights, reminds me of that moment. And the worst part is the lingering feeling that it's not over. That somewhere, they're still waiting. I talked to people close to me about what happened. Most tried to convince me it was just a dream, a manifestation of my exhaustion or stress. But how do I explain the overwhelming sense of reality? How do I explain the vivid details that still linger in my mind as if they were from something I lived while awake? And then, the most disturbing thought hit me. If these were just hallucinations, why do so many people report similar experiences? Not with the exact same details, but with the same essence. Presences, shadows, figures that shouldn't be there. Are we all sharing the same irrational fear? Or is there truly something out there watching us, waiting for moments of vulnerability to reveal itself? In that moment of reflection, I realized that I might never have all the answers. But something inside me has changed. Now, every time night falls and silence takes over, I feel a chill, as if what happened that night could happen again. And the truth is, deep down, a part of me is certain they'll return. It's only a matter of time. That was my story, but now I want to hear yours. Have you ever experienced something similar? Do you believe these visions could be real? Or do you think they're just tricks of our minds? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to know what you think. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the next chilling tales. Until next time, and remember, what watches us in the dark may be more real than we imagine.